Okay, so I thought I would make a couple videos in between all the power outages and the internet outages that are going on in my area. I wanted to make this a while ago, but just wasn't possible with all the disruptions. But I think we've got a little bit of a break here that I've got enough power and enough internet to get these things out. So let me start with the patch that came out, the update last week. Um, I'm actually really pleased. There was a couple things that were really needed. I already played this way because it made too much sense. So let's go through it. So in the advanced rule booklets, they came up with a terrain generator for three different biomes. This looks great. I really like this idea. I think they did a good job. But I'm going to put out a video that I think is even better. It's something that I learned from, if anybody ever played Mech Warrior, the one from HeroClix, they had a perfect one that I think would be fantastic for pickup games and tournaments where the tournament organizer doesn't really have these advanced tables like the I-95 guys did for Flames of War. They added rules for Army terrain with 12 Army terrain types. They added 12 new deployment styles, which is nice. Add 12 new extra missions. Added 18 new side missions plus new Mad Dash game mode. I haven't looked too deeply into the Mad Dash, although it does sound awesome. But here's the thing about all these missions. This is great for somebody who just got into it, is not really in the ecosystem of one page rules, but they want to have some variety. They're experienced players and they just don't want to play the base game. These are terrific, but there are so many missions and campaigns already out that are easy to get to. Either you can buy them or you already have them because you've subscribed for a while. Um, they have rules for action boosting, which is a pretty cool idea. However, let's see if they get down to it over here. Twists and gambits. I think Twist does the job with less learning of rules or less tracking. So action boosting is great. I would prefer Twists, but or one or the other. They're both good. I just prefer Twists. And what those are is that you get a certain amount of points where you can boost your one of your units, give it an extra attack or easier to hit or armor piercing, something like that. It's kind of like a free spell almost. So I thought that was pretty cool. Hero and monster feats. It sounds like a great idea, but I think it needs a little bit more refining because what if you don't have a monster? Okay, everybody's going to have heroes, but what if you don't have a monster? What about vehicles? I thought it was just a little incomplete. Adding rules for advanced casting, Winds of Power, I think is fantastic. It really starts to feel like Warhammer 8th Edition, which I thought the magic phase, for me, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good thing. Spell books, magic pools, miscast tables, these are all within the Winds of Power advanced casting. I think it's a really good addition. Definitely look forward to using it. Living spells, on the other hand, I think that's more for advanced players. I think people that, you have these special models because you need models or tokens or something for living spells. It adds a lot to the game, a lot to remember. So I think it's good, but you want to have two experienced players playing with those rules. Magic items, I'm not sure how this even works. It's just kind of like you get a random thing. I prefer to purchase my magic items. I think a that's just my style. I always like that from Warhammer where you can purchase magic items. And then they added 18 new random events. I really don't use those but it's nice to have those in there if you're getting bored with the standard scenarios. They reworked combat hesitation rules from Fog of War, which allow players to pass their turn. This is a very, very good alternative to the what's it called? The World War II game. I'm drawing a blank, but it's the 28 millimeter game that's very popular. It'll come to me in a minute. But they put, you take a die for each of the units, put it into a bag, and you've got your colors and your opponent has their colors in there. So if you've got 5 units and they've got 6 units, they put in 6 of their color, you put 5 of yours, and then you draw it randomly, and whoever gets the color gets to activate on that. So you may have the first 3 turns. You may not have a turn, a chance to react. There's a lot less predictability in there, and so that this one is a little bit different. Where if you've got less units on the board, you can make a roll depending on what turn it is, and pass your turn to them so that you could see what they do. That way, it mitigates a little bit of the skirmish type guys. What do they call them? Where they're just kind of throwaway units, chaff. So if you have somebody with a couple of chaff units, they're going to have to burn one of them so that you don't expose what you're doing and expose your units before you're ready. So I thought that was a really good addition. They work psychology section. This is really, really good, except for one thing. They do not account for the undead units. It makes undead units even better because they don't have to deal with this psychology. And so I don't like the idea of making undead units more expensive, because that's such a good idea, because you want to have a bunch of zombies that, crumble really fast. If they add a psychology section that targets undead units, making it more deadly to crumble. So I don't know. I don't know how you would fix that, but they definitely need to address the undead before I'm going to play with these rules. Rework brutal damage rules. Degrading profiles. This was definitely needed on I'm not sure if the table probably needs some refining. I think they're definitely on the right track. And directional damage, again, I'm glad it's in there. I'm going to take a closer look at it. I think this could use a little bit more refining as well, and a little bit more clarification on exactly how it works. 15 new stratagems. I always like stratagems, but I like army-specific stratagems, and so I don't really look at this too much. Twists and gambits. Twists is phenomenal. I definitely think this is something that should be played universally with everybody. Gambits, a little bit more. It's a lot more rules for not as much. I think twists. Reason why I like twists, and what was the other one? Action boosting, is that they allow for underdogs. So if you're losing, the twists and the action boosting will help the player that's losing get back into the game. And I always think that's a good idea. I've never been a big fan of chess, because once one person gets an advantage, then they just grind you down, and it's really mathematical, and it's just not as fun. When you have twists and boosting, give somebody a little extra so that they can get back into the game and have a chance to win without anything being ridiculous. It's just a little extra to make the person who's losing feel a little bit better about their chances. So I thought that was a really good idea. Adding rules for siege. And they got siege for fantasy and boarding actions for sci-fi. I'm still looking at these rules, but from what I've seen, I really like that. I think this is going to be something that people are definitely going to play at least once just to have it. But the boarding actions looks like a lot of fun. I'm wondering if a lot of these things are going to start getting, sort of seeping into the quest games. All right, so a little bit more clarification from these rules. Units must now be within charge distance of their target. These are the regular rules that they've updated, but don't actually have to end up in base contact. So basically, what this means is, let's say you are on a building or you're behind a fence or some sort of obstacle that you will be able to get across, but there's no space for you to touch their models. Now, as long as your charge would have ended you in base contact, it counts as being in base contact. It's probably easier if I show you visually, but you just have to visualize in your mind for now that just imagine rubble that's that you could easily go over, but your models can't stand on, otherwise they'd fall off. And it normally it would touch, so you would touch, and then you would just move it back, and it counts as being in base contact. Units in melee must now strike with all their weapons. Apparently there was an exploit where people didn't want to kill a unit. I've not experienced that, but it sounds like a super advanced tactic. I'm not sure why you would do that unless you're trying to get victory points somehow, but it's there now. Units may attack up to 2 inches horizontally, as before, but now also attack up to 4 inches vertically, which allows you to attack enemies on top of a ledge that doesn't have enough space to place both models. So let's say you're up on a building and you charge them, and would be able to get up the building, but you would be hanging off the edge. As long as you're within 4 inches up and down, you are in base contact, or you're in striking range. Because usually 2 inches, if you start piling in, the 2 inch rule is for people that can't get into base contact. But now you've got a 4 inch vertical that, as long as you're within 4 inches, is not too high, you are also able to strike. Aircraft rules, I think they did a pretty good job. I'm not a huge fan of how they do aircraft. And I'm not a big fan of how aircraft. I really do like Flames of War aircraft rules so much better. I think they did a better job where it's kind of like a magic phase where it's unreliable, but it can be very powerful, and you have to account for them. You have to get anti-aircraft to make sure that aircraft doesn't mess you up. Aircraft here are more like hovercraft, except they are forced to move around, so they might be out of position. Before, you basically had them for half a game. They'd come on the board, do their thing, and then fly off the board, and then you don't have them. And then they fly on the board turn 3, get to use them, and then they fly off the board. So yeah, it seemed a little wonky. Now, basically, they're just moving around, and they just have to move 30 inches, and that's it. Ambush and Scout, this is the one that I believe, I don't know if they're watching my games, or my explanations, but this is exactly how I played it. I thought it was unfair to roll off for Ambush and Scout so let's say you have the first turn and you're doing an ambush and you roll off, they do an ambush and you do an ambush, you roll off and you get to go second on the ambush. So they have to put their ambush, then you put your ambush out where you want it, and then you get the first turn. It's kind of like a double move. So now what they do is they do it in turn order. So if you do an ambush and I go first, then I have to place my ambush first, and then you get to place your ambush, and then I get to go. So I think that's a lot fair. Same thing goes with Scout. That just makes a lot more sense. Whoever has first turn has to deploy their first unit first. Lance, I didn't realize it was a problem. I understand that it just looks like a great weapon on the charge. I didn't have a problem with that, but they want to change it. So that will change how, because I play the High Elves, and I've got the Dragon Infantry, and I put that leader on it. Now I don't have to put the leader on there. I kind of would prefer to have, since I have the prowess leader, to give them +1 on the attack, making them a 2 up to hit anyway. With the lance, they're 2 up to hit now without the leader, so it kind of makes it redundant. Um, but if you're going to take a lesser cavalry, four cavalry, or sometimes it'll be five, I guess, that someone might have, but usually cavalry is four attack. Now it'll be a three, so that makes them pretty elite. They're going to hit a lot more now. I don't know if that makes sense to me because lances I would think would be very difficult to use. So I don't know why it would make it easier to hit. Giving the AP made a lot of sense. Maybe they should have put AP1 in rending. I don't know. It seems like +1 to hit. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, it might be more fun this way, but it just doesn't make thematic sense to me. So maybe they'll change it. They did say that they're going to look at these rules again in a month and probably make final rulings on it. I just thought to change it for change's sake, just because they didn't want to look like great weapons. I don't know. I would probably do something different. In fact, I might even make it AP3 on the charge, or AP2 +1 impact hit. I don't know. It it just doesn't feel like a lance to do this. Normally, I would say AP1 and first strike, but in OPR, you get first strike on the charge anyway. So I'm not sure how you would resolve that. Or maybe you get 2 hits per swing. I don't know. It feels like this was just a change just to make sure that it didn't look like great weapons, and that was it. For skirmish games, Shaken is units are now get +1 to wound check rolls. I think this is a fair compromise because it was too easy when you were Shaken. All you had to do is go up and tag them out, and they were out. Now, right before this rules, it made no sense to go after Shaken. So you still, with this rule, you still want to go after Shaken. It's just not an automatic kill. So I like this rule. I think it's good. They may even want to consider giving a +2 to that, because if it's the first one, you have to roll a 6 to knock them out. Now it's a 5. I think if you're Shaken, it should be a 4. So I would probably put a +2 there instead of a +1. For regiment games, units now pivot while using rush charge actions, making the game more playable and lethal in just 4 rounds. I think this is a good. They're moving in the right direction. I think the way that they did it in Napoleon at War is so much better. I'm going to play a couple games where I use Napoleon War maneuvers. And basically, what that is, and I hope some guys at OPR are listening because it's a really good idea. Basically, you move your movement. So if you're going to shoot, you move 6 inches, and then you can rotate 360. You can move in any direction and turn in any direction. However, if you're in the charge range or shooting range or something like that, probably charge range is what I would do. If you're in the charge range of somebody, when you end your movement, you have to make a quality check. So let's say you are moving to your right. You would turn your leader, whoever has the banner, whatever. You would move it to the right, the 6 inches, and it would face as though it's running in that direction. Again, it's probably much better. So I mean, if your unit is over here and you're moving in this direction, the leader would move 6 inches this way and face to the right. Okay? So it would face to the right, and then you would roll your quality check if you're in range of somebody, their charge range. If you succeed, then you can rotate in any direction, and then the whole unit forms around it. If you fail, then you have to stay in that direction. So if you move to the right, you move the 6 inches, and you have to stay facing to the right. If you pass your check, you can now face forward or to whatever direction that you want. And then if you have scout units, you give them a +1 or a +2 to that check because they're more maneuverable, but then they can only attack with the first rank or something. They only get one rank to fight with. So that's what I would change. I'm going to do a game where I'm showing that, and I think that would be a big improvement to because the regiment game just doesn't. It feels too clunky. And this isn't going. This is going in the right direction, but it's still clunky. For the regiment games, they also tweet ambush. This feels more like reinforcements coming off the board, or flanking maneuvers, something like that. So they should probably just change it to flanking instead of ambush. And but it's still a move in the right direction. Then they go into the core rules here. Clarified units can't be within 1 inch of enemy units at any time. Um, these are all rules that I think were pretty obvious and stuff that I went over. I don't think they needed to really clarify that. I thought they did a good job before. And I think a lot of the changes are positive, even though they may not go as far as I would like or be as refined as I would like, but they're definitely moving in the right direction. All right, so let me skip down to point cost. They reworked the scaling of AP. I think they made it more expensive, especially the higher AP, which makes a lot of sense to me because for me it was almost auto include. If I saw a AP3 or AP4, I'm going for it. Now they need to make it a little bit more cost prohibitive. I think that's a good idea. So you just take one or two of those instead of anywhere that you can. Rework costs of rules, ignore cover. So they repointed everything. I haven't really. It's very hard to do analysis, especially when you don't have internet all the time to check all the numbers. But I trust that they're trying to get it in the right direction. I was hoping they would put bounding with a lot of the scout units for regiments, but again, they're still in the mode of copy and paste from Age of Fantasy to Age of Fantasy regiments. And once they get out of that, I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm not going to spend too much time except for high elf fleets because that's a new army. Their strikers now have Impact 1, which I think was a good thing. And Human Defense Force, they totally revamped it along with the Wood Elves to update to the new models, their models, instead of another company's models. So I'm looking forward to see how those work out. I'm going to make a video about those armies in my next one. And so until then, I will see you later.